Okay, this is Night at the Museum, Part 2. We're going to be looking further at the human fossils that they have at the museum and some comments about them. You remember from our last time we visited, we looked at these 4 skulls. I wanted to look at this one in the corner here more in particular, the Homo erectus. It's got a date of 1891 on it. The skull that you see here at the museum is not the one that was found in 1891. For that, let's go and look at Eugene Dubois, the man who found the original skull. He was born in the Netherlands the same year that Charles Darwin presented his theory of evolution to the Linnaean Society in London. He grew up confident in that theory, except he disagreed with Darwin on one point. Darwin thought that man originated from the primates in Africa, gorillas and chimpanzees being there now, and Du Bois thought that man originated from Southeast Asia, the home of gibbons and gorillas. So, as an adult, he got a job with the Dutch government that allowed him to move to Indonesia. From there, he dug around until his team found fossils on a river in East Java, fossils that were forever to be known as the Java Man. The first 2 bones he found were a cranium, skull cap, and 1 molar tooth. Next year he came back and he found leg bone assigned to the same species. The species he called Australopithecus erectus. Australopithecus means man-ape. But by then, the term had already been used for 50 years to refer to chimpanzee fossils. So in effect, everyone knew that he was saying this is a chimpanzee who walks upright. Now, based on that skull cap and 1 tooth, a later sculpture was commissioned of the Java Man. However, I want you to notice that in order to make it look more chimpanzee-like, the top of the skull of the sculpture is flatter than the cranial bone justifies, and the brow bone was more prominent. A year later, Du Bois renamed this species with a new genus, Pithocanthropus. This simply reverses the term's meaning ape-man, but since Haeckel had coined the term in 1863 to refer to the missing link, everyone knew that Du Bois was saying this is the missing link between apes and man. The term was coined by Ernst Haeckel. If that name sounds familiar, remember he's the guy who designed the embryo diagrams to reinforce his theory of ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. The idea that as species go through their embryonic stages, they replay their evolutionary history. But we have found many more bones of this species since then, and in 1950 it was renamed Homo, because it is obviously completely human. Not only is it human, but we found evidence that this person made tools just like the American Indians, built thatch housing just like the Polynesians, navigated open waters, and colonized widely. The real kicker came in 2013 when articles like this were published about 5 skulls that were found together in Georgia, a country in northeastern Europe. Homo erectus was present, but who were these other guys? They had been named by other scientists as different species, and yet here they were, all buried together. This suggests that scientists had been too ready to name separate species of humans, when in fact there was an interracial meeting going on. Let's turn the corner to probably the most famous picture of evolution currently. All over the world you will find pictures or skeletons like this of a human next to a chimpanzee, next to Lucy, the first Australopithecus skeleton ever found. And I want you to notice about this particular human. His knees are slightly bent, his pelvis is kicked back, and he's leaning slightly forward so that his hands dangle in front of him instead of hanging naturally at the sides. Now if you saw me standing like that, you'd think there was something wrong. And I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, there's something wrong with the way this man is standing. He is positioned this way so that he can be related more to the chimpanzee. This Australopithecus skeleton was found in 1974 in Ethiopia, and it was dated at 3.2 million years old. This made it 50% older than any date ever given to a human fossil. But then 2 years later, in Tanzania, this trackway was unearthed. Fabulous find. It showed 2 sets of very human footprints walking through volcanic ash. And because it was volcanic ash above and below, they could date it very exactly at 3.6 million years ago by the current system of dating. This was 900 miles south of Lucy's find and 400,000 years older. And the footprints look very human. Now you don't have to be a paleontologist to tell a human footprint from any other kind of primate. So what's the solution for footprints being older than the oldest possible human record and older than the Australopithecus, which is supposed to be man's ancestor? Obviously, Australopithecus had very human feet. This particular rendering is made to represent the human footprints you see to the left. You have two sets of very human footprints, one much larger than the other. They were not one following the other because none of the footprints step on each other, and they were close enough together that they were close by intent. Notice the bird tracks going diagonally across the rendering you see on the right as those birds in the background. Now, the only objection anyone made about this rendering was made by a feminist group who objected to the woman looking like she needed someone to help her. Now, I ask you to look at these bones from Lucy. What can you tell me about her feet? Now, to be completely transparent, let's look at this diagram in the upper corner of the Houston exhibit. You have pictured the hip and leg joints of these three species. And because of the end cap of the Australopithecus femur, we know that it angled in just like a human leg so that it could put its weight straight down. Chimpanzees are not built that way, therefore they wobble. But what they don't tell you is it's built just like a gibbon. As a matter of fact, any tree-climbing monkey has his kneecaps turned inward for easier climbing. The clincher came in 2018 with this article in National Geographic. The foot bones of a 4-year-old infant were found. They were obviously Australopithecus afarensis because of the other bones found in the same area. This is what they look like. This is an amazing find. The foot bones were welded together in the fossil, so there's no question about the arrangement of the bones and what they represent. You're looking at the right side and left side and the top view of the heel, the carpals, and the beginning of the metacarpals, and even a section of the leg bone as it attaches to the foot. There was no denying because of this find that this creature was a climber. So the article simply states that it retained some ape-like traits, and it had a knack for climbing. The National Geographic article makes reference back to the hip and leg assembly to reaffirm that these creatures walked on two legs. But then it admits that the fingers and toe bones were curved to maximize climbing ability. So let's see what this means. I showed this picture to an orthopedic surgeon and asked him what he could make of it. He didn't know what it was. I said, "It's a foot of a primate." And with that he immediately said, "Oh, I see, but it's missing the navicular." I said, "The what?" This is a human foot next to a chimpanzee foot. And this is the navicular. Notice on the human, the navicular is much larger at the top, which allows a human to have an arch on his foot, where a chimpanzee's foot is flat. The arch allows a human to put pressure on the front toes and the heel. The chimpanzee does not have that aid in walking, but it is able to fold its foot backwards to make it easier for climbing. That's true for this climbing monkey, and it's also true for this fossil. Now look carefully at the fossil compared to the chimpanzee foot and the human foot. Which is it more like? The main difference between this and the chimpanzee foot is its navicular is much smaller. That's why my doctor friend couldn't even see it. He would never think to look for something that small. So what can be concluded? That a 3.3 million year old fossil shows that ancient toddlers climb trees. No implication about the adults. Somehow, it's got to have a completely human foot by the time it becomes an adult. Like a tadpole turning into a frog. I'm done.